Zoe had always dreamed of working as a tour guide in London. She loved the idea of showing tourists around the famous landmarks, telling them stories about the city, and helping them make the most of their visit. But there was one problem: she didn't speak English very well. Zoe knew that to work as a tour guide, she needed to improve her English. One sunny morning, Zoe sat at her desk with a notebook and a cup of coffee. "All right, Zoe," she said to herself, "let's start with the basics." She opened a language app on her phone and began learning some essential vocabulary for tourists. Words like museum, landmark, and sightseeing were easy to remember, but when it came to sentences, Zoe felt unsure. "Excuse me, can you tell me the way to the British Museum?" she practiced out loud. She repeated it a few times, trying to get the pronunciation right. "Excuse me, can you tell me the way to the British Museum?" Her phone buzzed with a reminder: "Don't forget to repeat after me to improve your pronunciation." Zoe smiled. She had read that practicing by speaking out loud was one of the best ways to learn. "I can do this," she thought. She took a deep breath and continued practicing other useful phrases. "Where is the nearest station? How much does it cost to enter the museum?" These were important questions she would need to know as a tour guide. She repeated each phrase slowly, making sure to pay attention to the sounds and rhythm of the words. Zoe felt nervous, but also excited. She knew that if she worked hard, she could learn the English she needed. She wasn't going to give up. After all, this was her dream job, and she was determined to make it a reality. As Zoe continued to practice, she thought about the beautiful sights of London. The Tower of London, Big Ben, the River Thames, they all seemed so exciting. She imagined herself standing in front of these landmarks, speaking confidently in English, and sharing their history with tourists. But first, she had to practice more. Zoe knew that English was not going to be easy, but she was ready for the challenge. A few days later, Zoe felt more confident. She had been practicing her phrases every day and could now introduce herself in English. Still, she wasn't sure how she would handle a real situation. One afternoon, as she walked through Covent Garden, a popular area in London, Zoe noticed a man looking at a map with a confused expression. He looked like a tourist. Zoe felt her heart race. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for, the moment she could test her English. The man looked up and caught Zoe's eye. "Excuse me," he said with a friendly smile. "Can you tell me how to get to the British Museum?" Zoe froze for a moment. She had practiced this question in her room, but now that it was real, her mind went blank. She tried to remember the words, but they seemed to slip away. "You dash him dot 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 you dot 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 go. A dot 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 double quotes," she stammered, feeling embarrassed. The man smiled kindly, not noticing her hesitation. "It's okay," he said. "Take your time." Zoe took a deep breath and tried again. "Go straight dot 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 and turn left." She was unsure, but she had to try. "Turn left." The man repeated, looking confused. "Are you sure?" Zoe nodded, but deep inside, she wasn't sure at all. She felt her face turn red. "It's near dot 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 near the dot dot. The park," she added, hoping to sound more confident. The man smiled and nodded politely. "Okay, thank you," he said, still unsure but appreciating her effort. As he walked away, Zoe let out a deep sigh. "I can't believe I said turn left when it should have been turn right." She shook her head. It wasn't the best first attempt, but at least she had tried. Zoe continued her walk, but she couldn't stop thinking about the mistake she had made. Why did I mix up left and right? She wondered. I practiced so many times, but then she remembered what her teacher had told her. Learning a language means making mistakes. Don't be afraid to try. Zoe smiled to herself. Next time, I'll get it right, she thought. She was determined not to let her mistake stop her. Later that evening, Zoe sat at her desk again, going over the directions she had tried to give. Go straight, then turn right. That's what I should have said, she said out loud, practicing the sentence again. Go straight, then turn right. She repeated the sentence several times, paying close attention to the words. She practiced with a few other phrases as well, making sure she was prepared for the next time a tourist needed help. Zoe knew she couldn't expect to be perfect right away, but she was making progress. The first challenge hadn't gone as smoothly as she hoped, but it was an important step. She had faced her fear of speaking to strangers in English, and that was something to be proud of. The next week, Zoe woke up early, feeling excited. Today was going to be different. She had practiced her English every day, and now she was ready for a new challenge. She had decided to visit the British Museum, the place she had always dreamed of showing tourists. As she walked through the museum's grand entrance, Zoe couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was the place she had always imagined herself guiding visitors through, explaining the history of ancient artifacts and telling stories about the past. But for now, she was just a visitor, enjoying the museum on her own. After exploring the Egyptian section, Zoe made her way to the museum's cafe. She ordered a coffee in English, feeling more comfortable with the words. "A coffee, please," she said, smiling at the barista. She was happy to see that her practice was paying off. She was getting more confident with everyday phrases. While sitting at a table, Zoe noticed a group of tourists nearby. They were looking at a map and talking in a language she didn't understand. It looked like they were lost. Zoe's heart raced again. This was it, her chance to help someone in English. She stood up, walked over to the group, and smiled. "Excuse me," she said, remembering to speak slowly and clearly. "Can I help you find your way?" The tourists looked up, surprised but happy to hear English. One of them, a woman with glasses, smiled and replied, "Yes, please." "We're trying to find the entrance to the Egyptian gallery." Zoe took a deep breath. This time, she felt more prepared. "Sure, go straight ahead, and then turn right," she said, pointing down the hallway. "It's on your left." The woman nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you so much." Zoe smiled, feeling a wave of pride. She had done it. She had used her English to help a group of tourists find their way in the museum. This was the moment she had been working for. The first time she had helped someone in real life, without any hesitation or confusion. The group thanked her again before walking away, and Zoe sat down at her table, feeling incredibly proud of herself. She couldn't believe how far she had come in just a few weeks. A few days ago, she had struggled to give directions to a single person, and now she had helped a whole group. As she finished her coffee, Zoe thought about how much she had learned. She had made mistakes, but each mistake had taught her something new. She had learned to speak with confidence, even when she wasn't completely sure of herself. And most importantly, she had learned to keep going, no matter how challenging it felt. Later that day, Zoe sat on a bench outside the museum, reflecting on her journey. "I'm getting better," she thought. "This is just the beginning. I'll keep practicing, and soon I'll be ready to guide tourists around the whole city." She smiled to herself, knowing that her dream was getting closer. Today, Zoe had experienced her first victory. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about taking the first step and making progress, and she was ready for more. The next few days were full of practice for Zoe. She spent hours going over phrases, reviewing directions, and learning new vocabulary. She felt more confident, but she knew that every new skill came with its challenges. One afternoon, while walking through Hyde Park, Zoe saw a family of tourists taking pictures. They looked happy, but also a little confused. Zoe approached them, thinking this was another opportunity to practice her English. "Excuse me," she said with a smile. "Can I help you with something?" The man in the group looked up. "Yes, we're trying to find the Serpentine Lake," he said. "Can you tell us where it is?" Zoe paused. She remembered the map she had seen the last time she visited the park. She thought she knew the way, but this time, she wasn't as sure. "You each go straight, and then, turn left," Zoe said, not sounding as confident as she had in the museum. The man smiled, but seemed uncertain. "Turn left," he repeated. "Are you sure?" Zoe felt a wave of doubt. She wasn't sure anymore. She had mixed up the directions, and it was too late to take it back. "Actually, I think it's straight ahead." Sorry, Zoe corrected herself, feeling embarrassed. The man smiled again, still grateful for her help. No problem. Thank you. As the family walked away, Zoe sat down on a nearby bench, feeling frustrated with herself. What did I make that mistake again? She wondered. I was so sure before. But then she remembered something her English teacher had told her. Mistakes are part of learning. Don't let them stop you. Zoe smiled to herself. I'll get it right next time, she thought. Later that evening, she took out her notebook and wrote down the directions she had just tried to give. Go straight, then turn right, she repeated, making sure she knew the path well. She wrote it again and again until she was sure she had it memorized. The next day, Zoe decided to visit another part of London, determined to practice more. This time, she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. And when she saw a group of tourists asking for directions near the Tower of London, Zoe was prepared. Excuse me, she said, walking up to the group. Can I help you find your way? The tourists smiled. Yes, please. We're looking for the Tower Bridge. This time, Zoe was confident. Go straight ahead, then turn right. The Tower Bridge is just past the station, she said, smiling. The tourists nodded, thanked her, and continued on their way. Zoe watched them walk off with a sense of pride. This time, she had given the right directions, and it felt great. She sat down on a bench, reflecting on how far she had come. Her mistake in the park had been frustrating, but it was a part of the process. Each mistake was helping her learn. Zoe had learned that mistakes were not something to be afraid of. They were just steps toward improvement. Zoe woke up early on a Saturday, ready for what she had decided would be her biggest challenge yet. She had been preparing for weeks, practicing her English, reviewing phrases, and learning about London's famous landmarks. Today, Zoe had arranged to meet a group of tourists who had booked a guided tour of the city, and she would be their guide. It was the moment she had been waiting for. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she stood in front of the London Eye, ready to meet her group. This was her first real tour, and it felt like everything she had practiced was leading up to this moment. She had planned her route, chosen the spots to show them, and even written down a script to help with the introductions. Just breathe, she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath. I can do this. Soon, a family of 5 arrived, all with smiles and excitement on their faces. Zoe greeted them with a smile. Hi, my name is Zoe, and I'll be your guide today. Welcome to London. The family was friendly, and they immediately made her feel comfortable. They introduced themselves, a mother and father, their 2 teenage children, and the grandmother. They were from Germany, and Zoe was happy to hear them speaking English. The first stop on the tour was the London Eye. Zoe stood in front of the large Ferris wheel, trying to remember all the details she had learned. This is the London Eye, she began, one of the most famous attractions in the city. It stands 135 meters tall and offers a beautiful view of London. Zoe felt a little nervous, but she spoke slowly and clearly, repeating keywords like tall, view, and attraction to make sure everyone understood. The family seemed interested, nodding and taking photos. Would you like to go on the London Eye now? Zoe asked, remembering her script. Yes, please, the mother replied. They all walked toward the entrance, and Zoe led them through the line, still feeling the excitement of the moment. After they got on the giant wheel and started rising into the sky, Zoe used the opportunity to tell them more about London's landmarks. From here, you can see the Houses of Parliament, Big Ben, and the River Thames, she explained, pointing in the direction of each site. The family listened intently, asking questions and taking in the breathtaking view. Zoe felt a sense of pride. She was guiding them through London, just like she had imagined. She was using the English she had worked so hard to learn. When they reached the top of the London Eye, Zoe pointed out some of the most iconic buildings. That's St. Paul's Cathedral, she said, and over there is the Shard, one of the tallest buildings in London. As the ride came to an end, the family praised Zoe for her knowledge and clear English. You did an excellent job, Zoe, the father said. Your English is very good. Zoe smiled. her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had successfully guided a group of tourists and used her English in a real-life setting. This was the moment she had dreamed of. It wasn't perfect. She still had moments where she felt nervous and had to double-check her directions, but it was a victory. She had overcome her fears, made it through the big challenge, and had done it with confidence. After the ride, they continued their tour, visiting the Tower of London, Buckingham Palace, and other famous sites. Throughout the day, Zoe felt more and more comfortable. The tourists asked her questions about the history of each place, and Zoe answered them with ease. Whenever she didn't know something, she simply said, "Let me check for you," and looked it up on her phone. At the end of the day, Zoe and the family stood outside Buckingham Palace, taking a group photo. "Thank you so much for the wonderful tour," the mother said. "We had a great time. Your English is fantastic," Zoe beamed. "Thank you for joining the tour. It was a pleasure showing you around." As the family walked away, Zoe stood there, feeling the weight of the day's events. She had done it. She had faced the big challenge and come out successful. She had guided a group of tourists in English, just as she had always dreamed. She looked up at the London sky, feeling a deep sense of pride. There were still many things to learn, but today, Zoe had proven to herself that she was ready for anything. The next few weeks flew by for Zoe. She continued to guide tour, meet new people, and practice her English every day. With each tour, her confidence grew. She felt proud of how far she had come since her first nervous attempts to speak English. One afternoon, after finishing a tour for a group of students from Spain, Zoe sat down in a quiet cafe, sipping her coffee and reflecting on her journey. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the mistakes, the nerves, and the moments when she wasn't sure if she could do it. But she also thought about her victories, the moments when she spoke clearly, helped tourists find their way, and made people feel welcome in her city. Zoe realized how much she had learned, not only about English but about herself. She had stepped out of her comfort zone and faced her fears, and now she was living her dream of being a tour guide in London. She pulled out her notebook and wrote down a few notes to herself. Mistakes are part of the journey. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn. Keep going. You're doing great. As Zoe looked around the cafe, she smiled. She had started with a dream, and now that dream was her reality. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but she was ready for them. After all, every step she took brought her closer to mastering her English and becoming the best guide she could be. Zoe stood up, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "I can do this," she said softly, smiling to herself. "I've come a long way, and the journey is just beginning." She walked out of the cafe, ready for her next adventure, confident, proud, and excited for the future. If you enjoyed Zoe's journey and the lessons she learned along the way, don't forget to give this video a like. And if you want to join Zoe on even more adventures while learning English, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Every step counts, and we're here to help you along the way.